Wealth, fame, and power. One man achieved it all and stood at the pinnacle of his craft. Does that sound familiar? If you've ever seen an episode of One Piece, it should. You'll think of Gold Roger, the man who gained everything the world had to offer and left it there at that one spot, the king of the pirates. But would it shock you to learn I meant someone else? I'm talking about the man himself, Eiichiro Oda, the creator of One Piece. Oda is one of the most prolific manga creators to ever live, and One Piece is the best-selling manga of all time. Nearly 25 years of publication, over 100 combined volumes, and over 1,000 chapters. Its epicness is daunting, and frequently prevents would-be fans from getting into the series. But in the contents of those chapters, there exists a masterfully crafted world and story, and despite the length, it remains popular, with new volumes regularly selling over 1 million copies still, as well as remaining consistent in quality. One Piece has become a giant in the industry, and despite fierce competition, in my opinion, it stands head and shoulders above all its contemporaries as the king of Shonen Jump. So what exactly is Shonen Jump? Well, Shonen Jump is a weekly manga publication that releases one chapter of many different series per week in its magazine. Over the years, Shonen Jump has birthed many of the most popular manga of all time. Think Dragon Ball, One Piece, Naruto, Bleach, Hunter x Hunter, and so on. One Piece has many successful contemporaries from Shonen Jump, but in terms of success, it's hard to dispute One Piece taking the gold. When talking about quality of work, on the other hand, it's a much closer competition, and honestly it comes down to personal preference. What I'm going to do is highlight some of the key factors for One Piece's success as a story, what exactly makes it so good, and elaborate upon why I consider it to be the king of Shonen Jump. One Piece has a main cast of characters that is not only large, but also very diverse and unique in both personality and design. As the story progresses, the crew grows in both size and notoriety, adding incredible character after incredible character to the main cast, without any of them feeling the slightest bit out of place. Each member fits in perfectly, while also adding a whole new dynamic to the crew and having unique relationships with each of the other members. Most of the time, a character has a story arc, or even a series of story arcs that build up to them joining, and one tool Oda uses to perfection is the flashback. Each member of the main crew has a flashback dedicated to them, fleshing out their personality, history, and forming the very strong emotional bonds the story is known for. One Piece is an extremely emotionally resonant series, and the core of that is the characters. The contrast between characters' often goofy designs and the tragedies that happen to them, as well as Oda's brilliantly heartfelt depictions of companionship, allow for unexpectedly effective bonds being formed between reader and characters. However strong those bonds may be, they more often than not pale in comparison to the bonds formed between the members of the Straw Hat crew. The crew's fellowship grows in strength of connection massively over the course of the series after many trials and tribulations, and the further you get into the story, the more apparent the strength of their bond is. Unwavering trust and loyalty for each other, as well as a deep understanding of each other, they are kinds of bonds only formable through continuously leaving your life in another's hands, and going through many life or death situations together. They are the kinds of bonds only formable through over 1,000 chapters of storytelling. Over the course of the story, Oda has created an extremely well fleshed out large main cast of characters that are incredibly interesting. It's no secret that a series so massive in length has a very large story, but what's most impressive about it isn't the quantity. It's the masterfully constructed, interconnected plotlines that weave seamlessly through each other, and the plotlines that are set up hundreds of chapters in advance, allowing for the most satisfying payoffs I've seen in fiction. Not just manga, but fiction as a whole. Some see the length of the series as a detriment, but were it not for the length, such things wouldn't be possible. The story of One Piece can be broken up into sagas, and further broken up into individual story arcs. Sagas consist of multiple story arcs with a main through line, a main goal for the end of it. In these sagas, Oda impressively builds up to a massive climax by using multiple shorter plotlines with their own setups and conclusions, all the while setting up pieces to be used hundreds of chapters in advance, in completely different sagas. For example, there's a character in their accompanying plotline that is introduced in volume 17. For hundreds of chapters, this plotline is built up in the background of the main story. But the saga that begins to bring that plotline to its conclusion doesn't begin until volume 50. and its climax doesn't happen for nearly 10 more volumes. Oda is a master of both long-term storytelling and delayed gratification, and when those things are paired with a large-scale story and a phenomenally fleshed-out world, it creates a truly fulfilling reading experience, one that feels completely worth the many hours you put into it. As for the plot itself, it is a truly epic adventure that explores a wide array of very unique settings, tackles many different topics ranging from freedom all the way to actual genocide, and also is rich in lore. Oda does a perfect job of fleshing out the history of the world while also keeping many things shrouded in mystery for most of the story's length. One such mystery being the titular treasure of One Piece, which to this day, almost 25 years after its introduction, is still a complete unknown. Not only is it a great mystery, it also acts as a significant driving force for the story. The treasure itself ushers in the great age of piracy, completely changing the state of the world and creating a massive scale hunt, the likes of which have never been seen in comics before. Thus, the goal of our protagonist is created and the story is initiated. The further the story progresses, the more apparent the stature of the goal becomes, seeing the largest players in the world not being able to replicate the deeds of the former pirate king. There's a very strong sense of progression as the story unfolds, with our main characters consistently working their way upwards in the pirate world and getting closer to the One Piece and doing what the series is most renowned for, exploring the world. If you've ever been around the anime watching section of the internet, chances are you're aware of the fact that One Piece is widely recognized as a story with great world building. The topic has been beaten to death, so I won't linger, but it's important to recognize for the sake of the video. The world of One Piece is one that has been fleshed out not via infodumps, but by pure exploration. As I mentioned, a major part of the story is sailing from island to island exploring the world, but that gives no scope into just how thorough Oda was while crafting it. The art style of One Piece is one of the more polarizing parts of the series, but like it or not, it's hard to disagree with the fact that Oda has some of the most standout location design in all of comics. The vastness of the world allows for a plethora of different settings, from snowy winter islands, massive desert continents, archipelagos made of enormous mangrove trees, to underwater islands inhabited by fish people, islands made half of ice and half of magma, and even islands in the sky floating on a sea of clouds. The spectrum of locations is unmatched. And what's more is that each of them have fleshed out societies that live off the land, and the characteristics of the setting frequently are incorporated into both the citizens' way of life and the plot of the story. The same thing can be said about the world as a whole, with its geographical formations. The world of One Piece consists mostly of water, perfect for a pirate story, with one main continent, a massive red wall known as the Red Line, that forms a ring around the planet, separating it into two seas. Perpendicular to the Red Line is the Grand Line, a long stretch of sea with unique climates and ways of navigating. The Grand Line cuts the Sea of the World into quarters, one named after each cardinal direction. Running parallel to the Grand Line are two similar stretches of sea, though they have no air currents, making it impossible to sail on them, and also act as living quarters for massive sea creatures known as Sea Kings. So how does one enter the Grand Line? Where the four seas, east, west, north, and south blue converge at the center of the Red Line is a massive mountain with a canal leading from each blue to the top of it and into the Grand Line. It's known as Reverse Mountain and sets both a very clear starting point and ending point for the main portion of the story, as the fabled treasure One Piece is rumored to be located at the opposite end of the Grand Line. Setting a clear path towards the final goal of the series is perfect for an adventure, and again it helps when establishing progression, as it's clearly visible in how far the crew has traveled. Some important topics in One Piece's story are those of oppression and limitation. The world of One Piece is crafted physically in a way that limits travel and exploration, and politically in a way that limits knowledge of events in history. With the way the world exists, and with freedom being such a prevalent topic in the series, you can see how our main character is overcoming the physical roadblocks of the world that limit them from being free is representative of the social roadblocks that they will, in all likelihood, overcome and dismantle. One Piece as a world that is crafted perfectly for a story of adventure and discovery, and to explore the messages present in the story to their fullest. So why should One Piece be considered the king of Shonen Jump? Well, this first point is somewhat polarizing to some, so I'll keep it brief. One Piece is the best-selling manga of all time, and it's an incredibly massive franchise. As of writing this, it has sold 490 million copies. And this is in no way an attempt to equate high sales with high quality, but it's important to acknowledge for context. With the amount of good One Piece has done for Shonen Jump as a company, through manga sales, exposure, the extremely popular long-running anime adaptation, you cannot dispute that One Piece is a figurehead of the company. and its importance cannot be understated. Its popularity is impressive, but more impressive than that is the length of its success. For over 2 decades, One Piece has consistently ranked high in the Shonen Jump popularity polls, placing first more often than not, and it remains to do so to this day. Likewise, the quality of the story remains great to this day. For such a long story, not knowing anything, you'd assume it was being drawn out. Some claim it is, but I argue that the scale of the story and there being no lack of original ideas disputes that. The story is ever expanding, with new concepts, characters, and plot lines being introduced regularly, but it never grows in such a way that feels unnatural or forced. Oda does a great job of keeping everything fresh and true to the story's heart. There are other franchises whose peak of popularity have rivaled and even surpassed One Piece's, but no series has sustained a level of popularity that high for over 2 decades, nearly a quarter century. And to the same degree, there are manga series even longer than One Piece, but none have remained at such a high quality for as long as One Piece has. One Piece is a vast, epic story with many aspects where it shines in, and it has reigned as a dominant force in the manga industry for an unparalleled amount of time. That is why One Piece is the king of Shonen Jump.